Part 8. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 71. As the night grew darker, those burning bonfires looked much dimmer than before. The soldiers who had been drinking and punching gradually became quiet after working for a day. In this area, except for some mercenaries who need to keep vigil, there is only the slight crisp sound of the firewood still burning in the flames. With the silence of the night. Immediately afterwards, an extremely fragrant fragrance instantly filled the entire ground. Those mercenaries who were still vigilant at first suddenly fell to the ground under the sudden appearance of the fragrance. As the night watch mercenaries fell into unconsciousness, a tent suddenly moved slightly. Along with a graceful figure, he quietly slipped out of the tent, and then another figure walked out from behind the graceful figure. The little medical fairy and Xian Chen walked out of the tent one after another. The little medical fairy finally felt relieved when she noticed that all the soldiers who were keeping vigil were unconscious. "I didn't expect a girl like you to be able to do this kind of thing. If you use this thing in the tent, wouldn't I be unlucky?" After hearing Xian Chen's words, the little medical fairy's face turned a little crimson. Thinking of the previous scene where Xian Chen hugged her and lay together on the bed, she couldn't get it out of her mind. "Call." The little medical fairy calmed down and signaled Xian Chen to follow him. As the little medical fairy took the lead into the dense forest, Xian Chen immediately chose to follow. In this dense forest, there are occasional long howls of wolves. Although the little medical fairy has a bold personality, she is still a girl after all. Therefore, her pace, which was originally fast, gradually became slower when she remembered the legend of the ape that circulated in the Warcraft Mountains. Boom! Due to the darkness of the night and the dense forest, it was difficult to see anything. Xian Chen didn't pay attention and bumped into the little medical fairy's back hard. The little medical fairy was stunned by this sudden collision. After confirming that it was Xian Chen, the nervous little medical fairy slowly relaxed. "It's too troublesome to travel like this, so I'll carry you on my back." Xian Chen frowned and suddenly knelt down. Before the little medical fairy could react, Xian Chen was already carrying him behind him. Not long after, when the two came to the steep cliff again, Xian Chen gently put the little medical fairy down. Under the faint moonlight, the dark shadows of the two people appeared looming on the steep cliff. Xian Chen walked to the edge of the cliff and scanned the dark bottom of the mountain below. Accompanied by the howling wind at the bottom of the mountain, wearing a white short skirt, she only felt a little chilly. Xian Chen noticed this scene, hesitated slightly, and took out a warmer robe from Naja. He put the robe on the little medical fairy and tied it for her. He said with a smile on his face, "Although it's hot during the day, it's cold at night. I don't want you to catch a cold just because of this." Feeling the sudden concern, the little medical fairy wrapped herself tightly, with a happy smile on her face. After Xian Chen's observation, it was obvious that the cliff was very steep. If you want to jump directly, it is definitely unrealistic. After a slight hesitation, Xian Chen turned to the little medical fairy and said, "Have you seen Do Huang? Fighting Emperor? I've heard of it, I've never seen it." After the little medical fairy heard Xian Chen's words, he was stunned for a moment, and Xian Chen's puzzled face was fully visible. After exhaling a breath of turbid air, Xian Chen immediately exploded with strength. As the jet black wings flashed out from Xian Chen's back, the little medical fairy standing in front of Xian Chen was so frightened that he quickly retreated. When Xian Chen stretched out his hand to grab her, when the little medical fairy reacted, her slender waist was already held tightly in Xian Chen's arms. Her pretty face turned red by this move, and then she raised her red lips and said angrily, "You guy, you know how to take advantage of me. Wow." However, Xian Chen ignored the other party's words and took off towards the entrance of the cave that he had already found. Under this sudden dive, the little medical fairy was so frightened that she buried her face in Xian Chen's arms and did not dare to move. Not long after, when the dive felt stable, the little medical fairy gradually turned her doubtful little head. Seeing the terrifying beast roar still coming from the dark cave entrance, the pretty little medical fairy with a pale face said timidly, "I didn't expect you to actually have the cultivation of fighting Emperor. But if that's the case, it seems that the treasure in the cave is definitely certain." Looking down at the pretty and proud little medical fairy, Xian Chen was a little bit dumbfounded. When Suanken's toes stepped inside the stone cave, Xian Chen released the little medical fairy from his arms. Laugh. At the moment of landing, Xian Chen suddenly noticed something. I saw an extremely hot fighting spirit rising all over his body, and then, he immediately burned and killed the thing that suddenly attacked. Snapped. A snake-like species with a grayish earth color all over its body. Burning with Xian Chen's hot fighting spirit, he was rolling hard. Xian Chen waved his arm, and a silver sword was instantly held in his hand. The little medical fairy was in a dazed state throughout the whole process. Immediately afterwards, Xian Chen picked up his sword and threw the gray snake to the bottom of the mountain. Xian Chen put away his sword, turned his head and frowned at the dull little medical fairy and said, "The monster in this cave may not have any effect on me, but if you do, it may be very dangerous. So before that, just follow me closely." Xian Chen exhaled a breath of hot breath, then raised his steps and was about to move forward. Suddenly he was held by a trembling little hand. Xian Chen glanced at the other party in confusion, and was about to ask, when he suddenly saw the little medical fairy unbuttoning her robe, and then wrapped Xian Chen and her in it. The sudden situation made Xian Chen dumbfounded. He reached out and scratched the other person's delicate nose, and then said softly, "Don't worry, as long as I, Xian Chen, am here, I will definitely not let you get hurt at all." After Xian Chen said this, the fire attribute fighting energy in Xianji's body burned even more vigorously. Because Xian Chen's grasp of Do Wang's strength has reached the level of a veteran. So for this kind of momentum, of course it is easy to come by. Naturally, there is no need to worry that these fire attribute fighting spirits will hurt the opponent. Accompanied by the release of fire fighting spirit, this quiet and dark cave instantly became brighter. And the feeling that was supposed to be a bit chilly disappeared almost instantly. As the footsteps continue to move forward, although there will occasionally be an attack by the gray earth snake midway. But they are often put down outside the fire element and burned into charred corpses. We walked for a long time in this endless cave. Just when the little Dr. Xian Dai frowned slightly and wanted to ask, she raised her eyes and noticed. Not far from them, there was a stone door that was emitting a faint yellow light. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 72. Looking at the stone door that glows with yellow light. The little medical fairy who followed Xian Chen silently. When he came to the stone door, his eyebrows were slightly frowned. He took a serious look at the stone door and said in a deep voice, "It seems that if you want to truly obtain the treasure, you must first solve this stone door. I just don't know if this stone will have a mechanism. If there is a mechanism, it will allow us to enter more quickly." As the little medical fairy spoke, she stretched out her delicate hand and began to touch the stone door to find something. Looking at the serious-looking little medical fairy, Xian Chen really didn't want to disturb him. But I thought that if I really wanted to find the location of the mechanism, more time might be wasted. So he gently patted the little medical fairy's shoulder, and turned around in the little hospital with a pretty face of confusion. Then a fist was quickly swung, but it hit the thick stone door accurately. "Hurry up," Xian Chen frowned, immediately hugged the little medical fairy's waist, and moved backwards. As the thick stone door was hit by a fist, cracks comparable to spider webs gradually appeared. Then the thick stone door cracked quickly. Bang bang bang, the falling rocks hit the ground, and there were bursts of muffled sounds in the cave. As the rocks rolled down, the little medical fairy opened her mouth slightly, showing surprise. Seeing the pretty and shocked little medical fairy, Xian Chen's lips curved into a nice smile. He smiled faintly and said, the mechanisms and the like are too complicated for me, Xian Chen, so I might as well just do it with a punch. Listening to Xian Chen's confident voice, the little medical fairy shook her head helplessly. As Xian Chen stepped forward, the little medical fairy reacted and hurriedly followed. Perhaps it is because the predecessors who built this stone chamber deliberately left some tricks in this stone chamber. So when the stone door shattered, it was probably because it was affected by the outside world, and then the originally dark stone chamber suddenly became brighter. With the stone door broken, along with the moonstone lighting on both sides of the stone wall. Immediately afterwards, the sight in front of the two people gradually became wider. This sudden situation scared the little medical fairy and hurriedly hugged Xian Chen from the side. Looking at the little medical fairy who was caressing about the little bird, Xian Chen smiled lightly and said, "Who said on the mountain top that there are many treasures here? Now that you have arrived at your destination, why are you still afraid?" Xian Chen's slightly teasing voice made the little medical fairy's originally pale face instantly turn red. "Who is scared? It's just because I feel safe around you, okay," the little medical fairy pouted her rosy mouth and muttered. His eyes really began to scan this huge stone chamber. The stone chamber looks a bit simple and empty, with moonstones used for lighting inlaid on the walls. When the little medical fairy's eyes stopped on a seat in the center of the stone room, she couldn't help but tremble with fear. Seeing that there was a withered skeleton sitting on the seat, Xian Chen raised his hand and waved a sword energy, smashing the yellowish skull into pieces on the spot. As the skull exploded, the pretty face of the little medical fairy could not help but twitch. He rolled his eyes at Xian Chen, then let go of his arms and looked towards the rather wide bluestone platform in front of the skeleton. After noticing that there were 3 locked stone boxes on the bluestone platform, he raised his feet and walked over. But Xian Chen's eyes fell on the piles of many golden coins and other extremely precious treasures. After a slight silence, he waved his arms. Before the little medical fairy could react, all the extremely huge belongings were put into the ring by Xian Chen. "Are you so short of money?" the little medical fairy said awkwardly, but when she began to scan the stone room again, she accidentally noticed a corner. There is a small flower bed deliberately piled up in that corner. In the flower bed, there are all kinds of flowers and plants planted in it. Along with a strange fragrance, lingering out, her beautiful eyes stared blankly at the small flower bed, but she hurriedly trotted over. Seeing that the little medical fairy was extremely interested in the flowers and plants planted in the small flower bed, she hurriedly followed them without thinking. It turned out to be ice spirit flame grass. The little medical fairy was so shocked that she almost shouted. Xian Chen was confused when he noticed this thing called ice spirit flame grass. Looking at the white branches, there is actually a fiery red grass crown. If you don't look carefully, you will really mistake this fiery red grass crown for a burning flame. "Do you need this?" Xian Chen asked doubtfully. Although he currently exists in Turkey continent. But because of the system, naturally no local people are interested in these precious flowers and plants. The little medical fairy frowned upon hearing this, raised her aggrieved little face, and said to Xian Chen, "Since I am a doctor, of course I am very interested in these medicinal herbs. It's just that I promised young Master Xian Chen. If Mr. Xian Chen is willing to accompany me into this cave, I will let you choose first." The little medical fairy's suggestive words made Xian Chen really laugh. He reached out and pinched the other person's pretty face, and explained in a dumbfounded way, "Okay, silly girl, all these herbs belong to you. Besides, haven't I already taken them?" Xian Chen said without forgetting to raise his hand. Seeing that there was a silver ring on Xian Chen's finger, the little medical fairy was slightly surprised. After hesitating for a moment, he shook his head like a rattle. "No, since I agreed to young Master Xian Chen, I must let young Master Xian Chen choose first." I didn't expect that the little medical fairy who took it seriously would be so troublesome. But when I think of anything the little fairy doctor said back on the mountain, A dangerous curve appears in the corner of her mouth. He picked the herbs on the outside beside the flower bed and put them into the ring. Then he said softly, "Okay, now that I have chosen, these are all yours. Don't worry, I, Xian Chen, am not very interested in these medicinal herbs." Xian Chen said happily, then walked away, preparing to head towards the location of the bluestone platform. Watching Xian Chen leave, the little medical fairy realized that she did not have the tools to dig out these herbs. The little medical fairy smiled awkwardly at Xian Chen's back. "What's wrong?" Xian Chen turned his head and looked confused when he heard this. "I seem to have forgotten to bring the tools for digging these herbs." Looking at the little medical fairy's somewhat embarrassed expression, he was slightly startled. So I lightly touched the ring on my finger. Then a luoyang shovel that shocked the little medical fairy appeared in her eyes. Are you sure you can use this to dig out these herbs?" The little medical fairy stood straight on the spot. Looking at the slender white legs of the little medical fairy, he coughed awkwardly after he realized what he was doing. "It's too troublesome to dig it out piece by piece. I think this flower bed isn't that big yet, so I'll just take it with me." "Isn't that big?" The little medical fairy listened to Xian Chen's words in disbelief, but when she noticed that Xian Chen actually put the entire flower bed into the ring, she truly felt what it meant to be shocked. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 73. Xian Chen smiled faintly, then walked to the dull little medical fairy. He gently pushed the other person's forehead and then said, "Although these herbs are rare, compared to those stone boxes, they are obviously not enough." Wrinkling her pretty nose, the little medical fairy hurriedly followed Xian Chen and continued walking towards the bluestone platform. When he reached the bluestone platform, the little medical fairy's eyes fell on the headless skeleton. Looking at the slightly yellowed skeleton, the little medical fairy laughed awkwardly, and then bowed to the skeleton. "It's just a corpse that has turned into decay. What is there for you to worship?" Xian Chen shook his head and said something, but was greeted with a blank look from the little medical fairy. I saw the little medical fairy walking to the skeletons, reaching out and gently wiping the dust on the skeletons, and then explained gently. "This senior has left so many treasures for us descendants. Besides, after all, we took something from it, so we still have to give it the respect it deserves, right?" The little medical fairy said seriously, but inadvertently. The skeleton that was still sitting firmly on the seat turned into a pile of skeletons almost instantly. Gilialo. As the skull turned into powder and scattered, a simple scroll followed. As the skull turned into powder, it appeared in their eyes. The little medical fairy opened her beautiful eyes wide and watched all this in disbelief. But Xian Chen looked extremely calm. He walked to the seat and took a look at the ancient scroll in his hand. Seeing that it was of no use to him, he held the other person's soft little hand and said softly, "Since all this is done by you, it proves that this ancient scroll is destined to you." Listening to Xian Chen's words, the little medical fairy was stunned, but after hearing what the other party meant, he waved his little fist and gestured in front of Xian Chen. "I didn't intentionally damage other people's bodies." Looking at the angry little medical fairy, Xian Chen smashed down the locked stone boxes. As Xian Chen's fist hit those stone boxes, the little medical fairy was so shocked that she could not speak. Xian Chen picked up a colorful scroll and noticed that there were a few small words written on the side of the colorful scroll. Only then took a serious look. "Seven-colored poison sutra? There is such a thing." Xian Chen raised his eyebrows in surprise, then delivered the seven-colored scroll to the little medical fairy. When the little medical fairy heard the 4 words "Seven Colors Scroll," a smile appeared on his face, but when he actually looked at the so-called 7 Colors Poison Sutra, he was so excited that he could not speak. Seeing that the other party was a little agitated and hesitated to speak, Xian Chen had no choice but to focus on another stone box that had been hammered open. When Xian Chen was about to pick up another scroll, he suddenly heard the somewhat sad voice of the little medical fairy. "Thank you, Xian Chen, because of my natural attributes. So you can't become an alchemist. But now that I have it, at least I can see the light again." Listening to the little medical fairy's emotion, Xian Chen was slightly stunned. After taking a long breath, Xian Chen took out the black scroll from the tattered stone box. When he noticed that the small characters on the side of the scroll actually said the Xian level advanced flying fighting skill, Eagle Wings, he delivered the black scroll to the little medical fairy again. "What you do?" The little medical fairy looked at Xian Chen in confusion. Although he knew what Xian Chen meant, the little medical fairy felt very confused. She and Xian Chen had almost no relationship at all before entering the cave. But since something happened, the deeds of Xian Chen that she had heard about were changed one by seeing them with her own eyes. "Now that I have received several gifts from Xian Chen, even a thick-skinned person would probably feel embarrassed if he took them again. Don't get me wrong. Since I am a Do Huang, flying is something I can easily do. But you are different. As long as you can cultivate this black scroll, flying will not be a difficult thing." The little medical fairy blinked in confusion, although she didn't understand what Xian Chen meant. But he still took the black scroll in front of him and looked at it carefully. When he noticed that the Xian level advanced flying fighting skill, Eagle Wings, was written on it, he hurriedly gave it back to Xian Chen. "Sorry, although I don't know what flying fighting skills are, I still know the levels of fighting skills very clearly." The little medical fairy refused seriously, but Xian Chen only felt a little embarrassed. Being rejected as a gift, Xian Chen had no choice but to put this so-called flying fighting skill into the ring. Although this flying fighting skill has no effect on the current Xian Chen. But if you can get it from the middle auction, then you will definitely get one, which will be big news that can cause a sensation in the entire Gamma Empire. When he saw that Xian Chen had given up his flying fighting skills, the little medical fairy, who looked a little melancholy, gradually showed a warm smile. Just when Xian Chen was about to continue taking the treasure in the third stone box, suddenly, the stone chamber that was supposed to be closed was suddenly shaken open by some extremely terrifying force. With the opening of a stone door. Immediately afterwards, several extremely large figures walked out from behind the stone door. When looking at these monsters with black hair all over their bodies and inhuman faces, Xian Chen waved the silver sword. It was as if he felt the anger from Xian Chen. The sword roared on the spot, as if replying to Xian Chen. It turned out to be a coyote. It turns out that the beast roars are coming from them. The little medical fairy covered her slightly open rosy mouth. Looking at those extremely tall monkeys, I instantly felt a little hopeless. After all, this ape is notorious in the Warcraft Mountains. And when those apes noticed the little medical fairy beside Xian Chen, each eye seemed to be emitting a faint green light. Green eyes stared at the little medical fairy. Just when Xian Chen was about to kill these apes, he accidentally noticed them. The little medical fairy, who was supposed to be standing next to him, actually walked towards the so-called He-Yuan as if he had lost his soul. No. This ape is actually capable of enchantment. If I hadn't been here, I'm afraid the little medical fairy would have. Xian Chen didn't dare to think further, looking at the drool dripping from the corners of his mouth. Xian Chen, who became angry with shame, immediately waved his silver sword and rushed towards those He-Yuan who had committed all evil deeds. Those apes are not stupid when they see someone attacking them. It was as if people with enlightened intelligence were avoiding it. Just when Xian Chen easily killed a Heshu ape and was about to continue killing, behind him came the heartbreaking cry from the little medical fairy. "What a dog! I won't kill you today. I don't deserve the surname Xian." Xian Chen Lei was furious, his fire-fighting spirit erupted on the spot, and his whole body felt like he was standing in a sea of fire. Those Haywen looked at the young man who looked like the god of death was coming, but their expressions showed fear. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 74. The apes suddenly surrounded the little medical fairy. At this moment, they were all looking at each other in trance. One of the Haywen's eyes even took a sharp look at the round, snow-white, slender, shapely legs under the skirt of the little medical fairy. Looking at these sudden apes, the little medical fairy was startled when she saw an ape suddenly reaching out to her. The little medical fairy frowned and immediately let out an extremely sharp cry. Little medical fairy. Xian Chen, who had killed one ape, was about to run towards another ape when he suddenly heard the heartbreaking scream from the little medical fairy. He suddenly secretly thought, raised his long sword in his hand, and knocked away He Yuan who was blocking the road with one blow, and then ran away like crazy. And those Haywen who felt extremely dangerous also turned around. But when they saw that the human boy was able to explode with such terrifying strength, everyone showed fear. Just when these apes were about to escape, how could Xian Chen give them a chance to escape? In this almost instantaneous effort, the Haywen, which was still a giant, died miserably under the Xian Chen sword. But when the frightened little medical fairy saw Xian Chen's arrival, it was as if he had grasped at a life-saving straw. He hurriedly threw himself into Xian Chen's arms, his beautiful eyes instantly replaced by tears. Xian Chen gently patted the little medical fairy's back and remained silent. I never expected that there would be so many ape monsters in this stone room. After being silent, I don't know how long it took. Perhaps it was because the appearance of these monsters really scared the little medical fairy. After a while, Xian Chen saw that the little medical fairy being held tightly by him did not react, so he frowned and lowered his head to observe. But when I noticed that the other party's fair face was covered with tears and that he was fast asleep, I felt truly relieved. Afraid of waking up the sleeping little medical fairy, Xian Chen held him in his arms and spent an unprecedentedly long night in this boring stone room. After a night of silence, when light gradually poured in from outside the stone cave, Xian Chen unfolded the black wings on his back and swooped out towards the stone cave. Not long after, the little medical fairy who had regained consciousness stood quietly beside Xian Chen. Looking at Xian Chen, who was still silent, a charming smile appeared on the pure and beautiful face of the little medical fairy. She stretched out her slender hand, then held it and said coquettishly, "Thank you, Xian Chen." "No. You're welcome." Xian Chen looked at the other party's innocent smile, his face turned red, but he didn't dare to look directly at it. "Well, I saw you sleeping soundly last night, so I was afraid of disturbing you, so I stood with you in my arms all night." In order to break the embarrassment, Xian Chen suddenly said something. When the little Dr. Xian Wang heard this, he was slightly startled, but when he reacted, he felt shy. Not long after, perhaps because those supporting the army finally discovered something strange. So not long after Xian Chen and the two entered the dense forest, they already saw several armed soldiers running towards the side with frowning brows. One of them is a soldier from the Wolf Head Adventure Group. When he noticed that the little medical fairy's gesture was actually taking Xian Chen's hand, he couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Fortunately, the two of them were fine, and the soldier from the Wolf Head Adventure Group hurried back to report back to Muley and others. But when those soldiers were waiting extremely anxiously, they saw that all the soldiers who were responsible for going out to search had returned. Just when they thought that the little medical fairy and Xian Chen might have left, they unexpectedly came from a direction in the dense forest. Two teenage girls were found holding hands. Due to the appearance of the elders of the Wolf Head Adventure Group, Muley was seriously injured. But for the soldiers who have been in the Warcraft Mountains for a long time, being injured is like drinking water. Alas! The elder from the Wolf Head Adventure Group looked at Xian Chen and the two who were talking and laughing, but he felt an unprecedented sense of suffocation. Muley blinked in confusion. Looking at the two of them, what he wanted to say was forced back into his stomach. The elder shook his head and smiled bitterly, then walked quickly to the two of them, and said respectfully to Xianchen, "Mr. Xianchen, Miss Xian'er, it's already dawn. Do you think it's okay to go down the mountain?" "Of course you can, but seeing that you all have lost your mind, I'm afraid it's hard to make you feel at ease with just 500 gold coins. How about this? In addition to the 500 gold coins given by Miss Xian'er and others, I, Xianchen, will give you 500 gold coins each in my own name." Hiss. The soldiers took a deep breath, and even the elders standing in front of Xianchen and the two were shocked by Xianchen's words. Although 500 gold coins may not seem like much, there are dozens of people in this group. If all are given an additional 500 gold coins, then the amount. It's absolutely huge. I didn't expect that Mr. Xianchen not only has high cultivation, but also has such a heroic personality. If there is still such a thing, please Miss Xian'er must contact me. Hee, I would be so embarrassed if I gave you an extra 500 gold coins. Thank you, Mr. Xianchen. Thank you, Miss Xian'er. For a moment, the soldiers who supported Xianchen looked at Xianchen with fear and admiration. Muley had a bitter look on his face, but seeing how talented and beautiful the other party was, he could only silently raise his hand to signal the wolf-headed troops to prepare to evacuate. Accompanying the mighty team, they rushed towards Qingshan town at the foot of the mountain range. Xianchen saw the little medical fairy with a weak breath, so he took out a light green pill from Naja. Looking at this light green elixir that exuded a strong medicinal fragrance, the little medical fairy was slightly startled, but his pretty face showed surprise. "What is this?" The little medical fairy looked at this light green elixir, but she seemed a little wary. He smiled awkwardly, then swallowed the light green elixir in his palm. As the elixir enters the body, the power of the light green elixir can be said to evaporate rapidly. As the power of the medicine quickly replenished the depleted fighting energy in her body, he took out another identical pill and handed it to her. "Don't worry, this is called Qi Restoration Pill. It's a pill that can replenish fighting spirit. I think you don't look very good, so I want to give you one to help you recover." The little medical fairy didn't expect that Xianchen would give him such a precious thing. After shaking his head, just when he was about to refuse, the wolf-headed elder who had been watching everything here silently came over with a laugh. When his eyes fell on the light green elixir in Xianchen's hand, a trace of imperceptible surprise seemed to flash through the elder's eyes. "Ahem, Master Xianchen. I heard from behind just now, that this is a Qi restoration pill. Since it can replenish your fighting spirit, I wonder if Mr. Xianchen can give me one as a gift." The elder blushed and asked for it, but it turned out that he didn't want to. The little medical fairy who wanted to reject Suanken's kindness. But he reached out and swallowed the Qi restoration pill. Along with the elixir entering the body. Under the evaporation of the power of the Qi rejuvenating pill, the little medical fairy closed her eyes slightly and allowed the medicine to be quickly replenished. The fighting energy in her body was almost exhausted. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 75. Sorry, I'm gone. Xianchen noticed that the little medical fairy's face gradually returned to normal, and then turned his head and replied coldly to the elder. The elder stood there awkwardly, but when he suddenly thought of something, he trotted towards Muley's position without looking back. Although there were twists and turns along the way, fortunately, I finally returned to Wanyazai safely. Since the little medical fairy wanted to distribute the precious medicinal herbs from the cave, she left Xianchen to wander alone in Qingshan town. Along the way, since it was widely publicized by the soldiers who participated in the protection of the herb collection team, almost everyone was surprised and delighted by Xianchen's show of prowess in the Warcraft Mountain network. Some of the more powerful support groups in Qingshan City also spent large sums of money to invite Xianchen to join. Faced with these invitations, Xianchen didn't even want to refuse them on the spot. Although those soldiers who wanted to recruit Xian Chen were rejected by Xian Chen. But no one dared to feel angry because of Xian Chen's contempt. On the contrary, compared to Xian Chen being able to join, they all hoped that Xian Chen would not join. After all, only in that way can all the support groups in the past be able to develop as usual. Under the watch of those supporting the army, Xian Chen then sneaked into the depths of the Warcraft Mountains. Along the way, Xian Chen directly erupted with pressure unique to Do Huang. This made those monsters that originally wanted to attack secretly, but they were all trembling and vigilant in the dark. Just when Xian Chen stepped into the interior of the Warcraft Mountains, suddenly, a violent energy fluctuation and a violent roar of a lion suddenly exploded in the sky like thunder. Xian Chen's expression changed slightly as he listened to the roar of a lion that contained a violent sound. He frowned and moved to the top of a tree, stepping on a leaf with his toes and staring at the sky in the distance. That's where the violent energy comes from. As the two black shadows collided at extremely high speed, what came into view immediately was not only a huge monster standing in the void, but also a beautiful woman with a plump and delicate body wrapped in a plain skirt. The woman is holding a long sword that emits cyan light. And her black hair was pulled up into a noble phoenix hair ornament. Her beautiful and charming face was calm and tranquil, making people feel in a trance. Behind this beautiful woman, there is a pair of cyan wings. Although the wings seemed a bit illusory, they were able to steadily make the woman stand in the void. Above the sky, a mysterious woman stood calmly. Tian Ran's beautiful face revealed a touch of grace and nobility that could not be concealed by plain clothes. Woman, do you really think there are no powerful monsters in this magical beast mountain range? Why did you suddenly break into my territory? Disturbing my rest, this huge monster is called the Amethyst-Winged Lion King. Now that her rest was disturbed by humans, she became furious, opened her mouth, and shouted angrily at the graceful beauty. Haha, there is no need for the Lion King to be angry, he just wants to borrow your purple spirit crystal. The beautiful woman standing proudly in mid-air stared at the amethyst-winged Lion King with her beautiful eyes. Then her red lips slightly opened and her calm voice kept circling over the dense forest. You just borrowed it as you said? Isn't it very shameful for me? The amethyst-winged Lion King retorted with a ferocious face, and his sharp fangs seemed to declare his home court. The beautiful woman frowned and looked at the other person quietly. She was silent for a moment before continuing, if possible, I would like to exchange something of great value with the Lion King. Something of great value? That woman, why does she look so familiar? Xian Chen watched this scene happen the whole time. Although they were far apart, the conversation between them was clear. Haha, human woman, although you are very beautiful, I don't think you can take out a treasure equal to the purple spirit crystal. If you can really get the same treasure in exchange, maybe I will consider giving it to you. The amethyst-winged Lion King sneered, making the beautiful woman's face turn extremely dark. He said displeasedly, you can, but it can't go beyond my scope. Hee. The amethyst-winged Lion King stared at the opponent with a pair of dark eyes, and then said with a ferocious expression, I happen to be in the transformation stage recently. As long as you can get me a transformation pill, I will give it to you. How about you purple spirit crystal? Hearing this, the beautiful woman's face instantly became extremely livid, and she said angrily, haha, transformation pill. That must be refined by a 7th grade alchemist. Xian Chen frowned slightly. When he heard the transformation pill, he looked at the amethyst-winged Lion King with contempt. With the transformation pill, the amethyst-winged Lion King can completely transform into a human form. After transforming into human form, their cultivation speed can truly be compared to humans. I didn't expect that. Although this amethyst-winged Lion King is a monster, his IQ is so high. Haha, but I'm afraid that if you look at the entire Jiama Empire, not many people have it. Xian Chen's face showed bitterness. Although he didn't know what the beautiful woman wanted the purple spirit crystal for, he had no idea about the transformation pill. Oh. In that case, I'm afraid I won't be able to give you the purple spirit crystal. The purple crystal winged Lion King replied coldly, then the wings behind his back vibrated, and then he was about to fly away downwards. However, at this moment, the beautiful woman hurriedly called to the other party and said with a frown, "If you are willing, I can use 3 pieces of 5th level magic cores and a book of advanced Qian level skills and fighting skills for you to practice." Skills are exchanged. Woman, I have no interest in what you are talking about, and I can solemnly tell you that you can get out of the Warcraft Mountains. Otherwise, don't blame me for not knowing how to show mercy. The amethyst-winged Lion King refused the opponent's conditions without hesitation. It has to be said that since the amethyst-winged Lion King is the overlord of the Warcraft Mountains, he naturally has a certain way to obtain the conditions given by the beautiful woman. Well, seeing that the other party obviously did not intend to give her the amethyst spirit crystal, the beautiful woman sighed softly, then slowly raised the sword in her hand and spoke angrily to the amethyst-winged Lion King, who looked confused. "If that's the case, then I have no choice but to grab it. Ha ha ha." The amethyst-winged Lion King reacted and suddenly laughed, turned to the beautiful woman with a ferocious face, and shouted, "Ha ha, woman, although you are very beautiful, your personality is the same as that of a poisonous snake." Looking at the beautiful woman preparing to attack him, the amethyst-winged Lion King drank, and from his huge mouth, a deep roar resounded throughout the entire mountain range. With the roar of the lion, the amethyst on the body of the amethyst-winged Lion King suddenly became brighter. Almost in the blink of an eye, raging purple flames burst out from his body. Watching the purple flames gradually tumbling and rolling, and finally gathered into a huge purple fire pillar, soaring straight into the sky, the beautiful woman holding a long sword only felt that the high temperature in this area was extremely hot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 76. It seems that the Lion King's battle is inevitable. Yun Yun sighed lightly. Then he raised his palm in this hot space. As she raised her palm, a small green tornado suddenly appeared in the sky. The tornado was only 2 meters in size at first, but after a while, the tornado surged in the wind and turned into a tall building in the blink of an eye. As the tornado roared and rotated, the giant trees in this area were continuously forcibly pulled out, and then twisted into sawdust all over the sky by the violent whirlwind. Looking at the opponent's moves, he groaned, then flapped his wings. Following its body, the huge purple fire pillar that reached 2 or 3 feet into the sky separated from the body and hit the cyan storm. Almost instantly, accompanied by an extremely ear-piercing rumbling sound, the entire space seemed to tremble. Snort. Yun Yun frowned slightly, then raised her sword again and charged towards the amethyst-winged Lion King. Human woman. You underestimate me, the king of the eastern mountains. As the purple light in the eyes of the amethyst-winged lion beast suddenly became strong, the huge palm claw suddenly brought up a bright purple light and smashed down towards Yun Yun. At the moment when the palm fell, the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart, and an extremely harsh scream came out. As the two continued to collide, the amethyst-winged Lion King relied on his powerful physique to defeat Yun Yun every time. Fortunately, Yun Yun herself is also a Do Huan cultivator. Otherwise, if she were to be replaced by a monk below Do Huan, she would probably not die, but would also become disabled. Faced with this kind of perverted close collision, Yun Yun did not dare to react appropriately, but kept giving way. Seeing that Yun Yun was at a disadvantage, Xian Chen, who wanted to take action, remained silent. Thinking of the scene where Yun Yun robbed Nalan Yan Ran, she suddenly felt so angry in her heart. Looking up at the extremely gorgeous battle in the sky and the scene of the constantly undulating space, Xian Chen quietly leaned against the tree and silently chose to watch the battle. Although the shock caused by this battle was extremely huge, not a single monster dared to step forward to help. Xian Chen could clearly feel the crazy battle between man and beast. At this moment, there are three huge monsters. They stood proudly on the top of the three mountain tops, but their eyes were in perfect harmony, closely watching the battle high in the sky. If we look at the rules of human cultivation, these three powerful monsters are all at level 5 or above. According to the rules, they are all powerful beings that can rival the Do-Chi continent's Do Wang. But it is such a 5th level ferocious beast, but they still know very well that now that they have opened their spiritual intelligence, they are as intelligent as humans. If anyone dares to choose to help at this time, then it will definitely be against this man with the eastern mountain range. The insult of the amethyst-winged Lion King known as the King. But some people with lower ranks could only stand on the ground and keep wailing. Xian Chen frowned and looked at the tree where he was. There were already a large number of magical beasts. Looking at these monsters that looked at him fiercely, Xian Chen had a look in his eyes. Just knock back these 3rd and 4th level monsters on the spot. These scared away monsters only dared to hide in the distance and quietly look at the young man on the tree trunk. At this moment, although they have this 4th level monster among them, but they all know very well that human teenagers who can watch the battle at such a close distance are definitely not something that their level can get involved with casually. Roar! As the sun gradually set and dusk appeared, the amethyst-winged Lion King finally couldn't bear it anymore. It raised its head and roared, and the monsters on the ground raised their heads and roared, as if they were swearing something. Human woman! You really have made me unbearable, the amethyst-winged Lion King roared in a low voice, and the pressure released from his body instantly caused those roaring monsters to kneel on their front paws and surrender. Haha, as long as the Lion King handed over the purple spirit crystal before, it stands to reason that I would have left long ago, and this kind of thing would not happen now. Yun Yun spoke coldly. Although she was scarred, she was not oppressed by the power of the amethyst-winged Lion King. So the eyes looking at the amethyst-winged Lion King at this moment were naturally full of disdain. When the amethyst-winged Lion King saw that the human woman not far away was so arrogant, the original coercion on his body changed rapidly almost instantly. As the aura of the amethyst-winged Lion King changed, the monsters on the ground seemed to have seen something terrible and began to evacuate one after another. And even the three monsters standing on the top of the mountain chose to leave almost with a tacit understanding. Along with the original coercion of the amethyst-winged Lion King, earth-shaking changes are taking place. Yun Yun frowned and looked at the other person, with a serious expression on her face, feeling the sudden and strange surge of energy in the world around her. Her cheeks also gradually became serious. As the wind roared around her, Yun Yun took a deep breath. Looking at the whole body of the amethyst-winged Lion King, purple brilliance shrouded the world. An ominous premonition suddenly welled up in Yun Yun's heart. And the amethyst-winged Lion King also came up after a long time of deliberation. The purple light it originally released suddenly contracted. Almost in the blink of an eye, the sky was filled with purple flowers that originally dyed the sky purple. It was instantly compressed into a dark purple light pillar of only about half a foot. Woman! You forced me to do this. Amethyst seal. When the purple light flashed, following the deep roar of the amethyst-winged Lion King, the purple beam of light quickly rushed towards the frowning Yun Yun. Watching the purple beam of light rushing toward her, Yun Yun's pretty face was full of surprise. You can actually seal it? How is this possible? Yun Yun reacted and hurriedly used her ultimate fighting skills to resist. Splitting wind whirlwind, Yun Yun shouted softly, and then the space in front of her fluctuated slightly, accompanied by countless huge dark green wind blades that were more than 10 feet in length, fiercely attacking the purple light pillar. Woman! You are looking for death. Seeing that the other party wanted to resist, the amethyst-winged Lion King immediately shouted. As his anger increased, the purple beam of light became more and more fierce. Boom! Two extremely powerful killing moves collided almost instantly. Listening to this terrifying noise, Xianchen held a piece of grass in the corner of his mouth, but his face looked happy. However, just when Yun Yun saw the purple beam of light gradually dimming, she suddenly realized that another purple beam of light suddenly shot out from behind her. Just when Yun Yun reacted and was about to resist, it was already too late. As the beam of light hit Yun Yun's abdomen, the figure of the amethyst-winged Lion King immediately flashed and swooped towards Yun Yun. Seeing the opponent raising his claws and trying to slap him down, Xianchen, who was just about to take action, hurriedly chased after a figure that disappeared quickly. But the amethyst-winged Lion King, who was supposed to be a sure winner, was in an extremely embarrassed state at the moment. The single horn that originally grew on its head was cut off in half by a sharp blade at some point. But at this moment, the amethyst-winged Lion King stared with huge blood-red eyes and roared ferociously with murderous intent, causing the mountain of monsters to move around in a hurry and crazily. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 77. Accompanied by the angry roar of the amethyst-winged Lion King, the monsters on the ground began to search for the place where Yun Yun disappeared. Thousands of magical beasts were searching for Yun Yun's whereabouts in the Magical Beast Mountains, which seemed to be in an extremely difficult situation. Normally, the soldiers of the adventure group would be scared to death when they saw such a huge group of monsters. However, Xianchen walked extremely calmly above these groups of monsters. Relying on the waving of the black wings behind his back, he felt as stable as walking on flat ground. But when the arrogant amethyst-winged Lion King noticed a figure in the dense forest, he was frightened and hurriedly disappeared in a direction. Almost in an instant, the amethyst-winged Lion King, who was still furious, had disappeared in mid-air. And Xianchen also began to search for Yun Yun's whereabouts. Although it was Yun Yun's fault for kidnapping Nalan Yanran in the first place, if Xianchen were to witness Yun Yun's tragic death at the claws of these monsters, it would definitely not be what he wanted to see. Not long after, Xianchen finally found Yun Yun, who was seriously injured and unconscious in the river under a waterfall. At this moment, Yun Yun was lying quietly on an extremely huge boulder. Looking at this woman who was supposed to be extremely beautiful, her face turned extremely pale at this moment. After taking a deep breath, Xianchen still chose to help her. As Xianchen's palms wrapped around her calves and the back of her head, she immediately felt the softness and tenderness of warm jade, and the touch was extremely wonderful. Because Yun Yun was already wet by the rushing water from the waterfall, she looked strangely beautiful at this moment. As Xianchen picked up Yun Yun, the chasing monsters stopped and wailed when they saw that there was an extremely powerful monk. Xianchen turned around and glared at those monsters, then picked them up and walked towards the stone cave not far away. Perhaps it was because of the previous battle between Yun Yun and the amethyst-winged Lion King that it attracted a large amount of attention from Warcraft. Therefore, there is no danger in the cave at this moment. After putting Yun Yun down smoothly, Xianchen exhaled a breath of turbid air, and was truly amazed by Yun Yun's beauty. His eyes swept over that pretty face. Xianchen's eyes slowly moved down. When he saw that there were 5 terrifying claw marks on the opponent's chest under his jade neck, Xianchen, who frowned, looked extremely pitiful. Looking at the other party's originally white clothes, they were stained red with blood. Yun Yun, who was in a coma, also frowned slightly, as if she would open her eyes and wake up in the next second. Whether you are pretending to be comatose or really comatose, if I don't save you, you may die. Xianchen took a deep breath, then stretched out his hands and decisively untied her blood-stained clothes. As her palms tore the opponent's clothes, and her fingers just touched the opponent's skin, Yun Yun, who should have closed her eyes tightly, suddenly opened her eyes as if encountering a formidable enemy. Noticing that there was a hint of coldness and shame in the other person's beautiful eyes, Xianchen, who was embarrassed for a moment, forgot to take back his hand. However, Xian Chen did not pay attention to the gaze from the other party. Instead, after tearing open his plain white clothes, he felt extremely complicated when he noticed that the other party actually had a light blue metal inner armor inside. There is one more thing inside, which seems to be disappointing to you. Yun Yun lightly opened her red lips and looked at Xian Chen, but her eyes were full of ridicule. Xian Chen was stunned for a moment, but seeing that the other party was teasing him, he reached out and gently touched the inner armor. With the touch of the fingers, the wounds in the inner armor suddenly surged throughout the body like an electric shock. Noticing that the other party was more honest, he looked at the light blue inner armor that wrapped the woman's delicate body. Xian Chen turned to the woman with slightly blushing cheeks, shook his head and smiled bitterly. If I want to completely clean your wound, I'm afraid your inner armor must be untied. Listen to Xian Chen's words. Yun Yun's body trembled obviously. He took a deep look at Xian Chen, took a deep breath, and slowly closed his beautiful eyes. The long eyelashes trembled slightly, but the voice was quite calm. Untie it, I believe in Nalan Yan Ran's vision. This. Xian Chen was embarrassed for a while, and he wanted to tease the other person severely, but when the other person said Nalan Yan, Xian Chen had to be serious again. However, since the other party already knew Xian Chen's true identity, there was no need for Xian Chen to continue pretending. Since the inner armor had to be untied from behind, Xian Chen helped him up and changed his position slightly. Then he gently tore open the other party's clothes from behind. As the clothes fell to the ground, Xian Chen could see Yun Yun's charming curves. There are only a few gold threads tied behind the inner armor, but in the middle of the gold threads, there are several metal buckles. Although I don't understand who designed such a weird inner armor. But when he noticed that the other party's beautiful back was actually covered with several red marks drawn by those golden threads, Xian Chen knew how to pity the beauty. But he couldn't help but reach out and touch it gently. When fingers touched Yun Yun's skin, it was almost instantaneous. He felt that the other party's body suddenly became tense. It can be seen from this that although Yun Yun is a Do Huang expert with extremely powerful strength, but when it comes to the contact between men and women, it's not as bland as she made it out to be. When the clothes fell to Yun Yun's slender waist, Xian Chen then deliberately and slowly untied the metal buckle of his inner armor. The time it took to untie the metal mouth was extremely painful for Yun Yun. When Xian Chen gently untied the metal buttons one by one, Xian Chen stood up and walked to Yun Yun. Since the inner armor can be said to be the opponent's last line of defense, Xian Chen was stunned on the spot under such a direct gaze. And when Yun Yun raised her head and noticed that Xian Chen was looking down, not looking away the whole time, her snow-white skin gradually turned a light pink. As her delicate body continued to tremble slightly, Yun Yun warned in a trembling voice, "As a monk, how can you only focus on the skin? What you should pay more attention to is the injury." Awakened by this voice, Xian Chen really noticed her cheeks. There was also a layer of tempting blush. However, when the eyes of the other party collided, Yun Yun's already blushing face turned even redder. "I'm going to start cleaning the wound." Xian Chen pretended to be calm and took a breath of cold air, then took out some clean cotton wool from the ring. Noticing that Xian Chen took out another jade bottle from Naja, Yun Yun, who frowned, suddenly shouted to stop. "What's wrong?" Xian Chen was confused and looked directly at Yun Yun, but he seemed a little impatient. Yun Yun noticed the change in the other party's expression, and considering the terrifying strength of the other party, she forced a forced smile on her face. As Yun Yun closed her eyes tightly, Xian Chen then poured out some light green liquid from the bottle. As the medicine was poured out, Xian Chen used a clean cotton cloth and slowly wiped the blood near the other party's wound. With Xian Chen's gentle wiping, Yun Yun's pair of beautiful eyelashes. It was also trembling slightly. Along with the noble phoenix hair ornament on her head, some were quietly scattered. Only then did Xian Chen notice that although the other party was less graceful, he was indeed more feminine and lazy. But when Yun Yun noticed that the other party's movements had stopped, she slowly opened her beautiful eyes. But when he noticed that the other party was looking at him affectionately, Yun Yun looked shy, but she quickly closed her eyes again. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 78. Noticing the shameful look on the other person's face, Xian Chen raised a smile at the corner of his mouth. After carefully cleaning the wound, he poured some white powder from another jade bottle onto Yun Yun's injured wound. With the appearance of white powder, after being stimulated by the white powder, Yun Yun, whose eyebrows were slightly furrowed, made a low, melancholy sound that contained pain in her voice. Don't worry, since you are Nalan Yan Ran's master, I, Xian Chen, will naturally save you seriously. Hearing the other party's melancholy voice, Xian Chen smiled slightly. So sprinkle the white powder evenly on the wound. Sprinkle the white powder evenly. Then he took out some cotton cloth to stop bleeding and carefully wrapped her wound. After a while, after finishing all these, Xian Chen clapped his hands and sat next to her. After noticing that the other party was still frowning, he said softly, "Your wounds have been taken care of, but you are so seriously injured that you still need to mediate yourself." "Thank you, Xian Chen. If there is a chance, I really want to invite you to join our Yunlin section." After opening her eyes, she noticed that Xian Chen was sitting next to her. After a moment of silence, the shy Yun Yun suddenly smiled at Xian Chen. That smile was unrivaled. "Haha, Yunlin sect, I have thought about it, but not now." Xian Chen shook his head and refused. This was something Yun Yun never expected. She never thought that as big as her Yunlan sect, there was no place where Xian Chen could stay. Yun Yun, whose face became a little ugly and displeased, said in a low voice, "I won't be able to recover from my injury in a few days, but if you are here, maybe those monsters in the outside world won't treat me badly. We make an impact. I can send you back to Yunlin sect, but with you now, can you still move?" Xian Chen frowned slightly. Although he had also thought about spending a few days with Yun Yun in this cave, but thinking that he had promised the little medical fairy to go to Wuyutan City, he shook his head and refused. Hearing Xian Chen's words, he suddenly thought that the scene in front of him might be seen by Xian Chen. His pretty face froze, and then a large blush came over him. He stamped his feet bitterly and cursed, "I almost forgot, you this guy." However, just after Yun Yun finished speaking, following her subtle movements, Xian Chen's eyes seemed to have a gleam of light. Under such longing eyes, Yun Yun shouted in shock, hurriedly covered her body with her hands, and slapped the other party hard. "What are you doing?" Xian Chen, who was caught off guard and looked angry, roared immediately. Yun Yun also woke up instantly under Xian Chen's roar. If it weren't for Xian Chen, she might have become the target of those monsters. Looking at the clearly visible palm prints on the other person's cheek, he suddenly reached out and touched it gently. In this situation, Xian Chen, who looked confused, unexpectedly reached out and hugged Yun Yun's soft waist from the front. Being hugged by this sudden force, Yun Yun's body suddenly stiffened, and she raised her hand like a reflex, and was about to continue to slap Xian Chen in the face. However, at this moment, Xian Chen suddenly tilted his head and kissed Yun Yun's red lips. Under the sudden deep kiss, Yun Yun, whose eyes were evasive, suddenly felt a soft feeling on her lips. But listen carefully to the other person's voice. It turned out to be a rare cry. "This." Xian Chen opened his closed eyes and saw crystal clear tears sliding down his face. Xian Chen then let go of the opponent, walked quickly to the cave, and plunged his silver sword, which had killed countless monsters, into the ground. "Sorry." Xian Chen let out a breath of turbid air and left without looking back. But Yun Yun stayed on the spot crying. She is the leader of the Yunlin sect, and she is a strong person with the ability to fight against the emperor. Never thought that something like this would happen today. Yun Yun, who became angry with shame, looked at the silver sword isolated in front of the cave. After being silent for a long time, she returned to sit on the stone bed. She closed her eyes and said nothing, but she couldn't calm down her mind. Not long after, ferocious beasts roared towards the entrance of the cave. Yun Yun's pretty face was slightly startled. When she immediately thought of resisting, she saw that the silver sword thrust straight into the ground could actually emit streams of sharp sword energy. These sword energies caused ripples, and almost everywhere they went, those monsters that wanted to rush into the cave were killed on the spot by the sword energies that burst out at extremely fast speeds. This is... Yun Yun opened her mouth slightly, with a surprised look on her face, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be trembling. She did not expect that although Xian Chen left her, he would leave behind an extremely terrifying sword. After seeing that the sword was able to kill a 4th-level monster in an instant, Yun Yun's tense body relaxed a little. Ho ho ho. However, outside the cave, there were 3 terrifying monsters with 5th-level strength standing respectively. At this moment, they were like leaders, giving orders to the 4th and 3rd-level monsters. As these monsters struck again and again, the 3 monsters with level 5 strength all had the same extremely ugly expressions. Although the reproductive capacity of Warcraft is extremely strong, it does not mean that it can be consumed wantonly. After all, in this Warcraft mountain range, there are many other top-level Warcraft from several other lines. Roar, one of the demonic beasts with level 5 strength roared immediately, followed by the groups of demonic beasts that reluctantly evacuated. At this moment, a supreme monster with a broken horn chose to leave with bloodshot eyes. Yun Yun walked to the stone cave and saw that there were many corpses of monsters lying on the ground. Then she looked at the silver sword with eyes full of surprise. This sword, just think of it as a gift to compensate you for taking advantage of me. Yun Yun Kaishui's eyes dodged slightly. With the protection of the silver sword, he can naturally recover himself safely. After leaving, Xian Chen stood on a mountain top, quietly watching the continuous attacks of those monsters. He originally wanted to help, but unexpectedly discovered that the silver sword that was supposed to be sleeping actually woke up on its own after he chose to leave. Seeing those sharp sword shadows constantly attacking the monsters that wanted to charge, Xian Chen felt completely relieved and chose to leave temporarily. After leaving the Warcraft Mountains, Xian Chen continued to rush towards Qingshan Town. Qingshan Town was as lively as ever, but when those people noticed that Xian Chen had blood on his body, they all rushed to his side nervously. After hearing the sound, the little medical fairy also ran out of Wanyeo Palace with a nervous look on his face. When he noticed that Xian Chen's whole body was stained with red blood, the little medical fairy rushed into his arms as if he was going crazy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 79. Where have you been? Do you know that there was a lot of noise in the Warcraft Mountains just now, which makes me worried about you? The little medical fairy's worry made Xian Chen's mouth feel helpless and bitter. If he told the little medical fairy that instead of being injured, he actually met an extremely beautiful beauty, the still frightened little medical fairy would definitely run into the kitchen and pull out a kitchen knife in anger. Worrying you? Those deafening sounds just now were actually a battle between 2 extremely high-level monsters. And my blood is also from other monsters. Xian Chen touched his nose and explained awkwardly, but the little medical fairy didn't care and insisted on carefully checking Xian Chen. After it was confirmed that he was really not injured, the little medical fairy finally let go of his nervous mood. When Xian Chen noticed that the other party cared about him so much, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. After taking a deep breath, he smiled and said to the other party, "Don't worry, don't you know my strength yet? The little medical fairy rolled her eyes at Xian Chen, then grabbed the other man's arm and ran towards the 10,000 medicine palace. The soldiers were extremely envious as they looked at the two men flirting with each other, but Xian Chen's strength was enough to put them all beyond their reach. After being pulled into a room by the little medical fairy, the little medical fairy hurriedly said, "Do you know? Those herbs you gave me were targeted by the owner of Wanyaozai. And he actually knew that I had that book Colorful Poison Sutra." "You mean, you didn't open the 10,000 medicine palace, the owner of Wanyaozai?" The little medical fairy was obviously amused by Suankin's words. Looking at Suankin's speechless expression, a smile appeared on her pretty face, and then she said with a smile, "It would be great if I were the master of Wanyaozai, I just a doctor from Wanyaozai." Xian Chen coughed awkwardly, then suddenly hugged the other party's waist and said with a smile, "If he really dares to attack your idea of the seven-colored poison sutra, I can guarantee that he will never come back." Xian Chen said, and was about to take out his silver sword, but suddenly remembered that his silver sword seemed to be still in front of the cave where Yun Yun was. He sighed softly, and before the little medical fairy could continue to speak, there was a knock on the door, followed by a middle-aged voice full of obscenity, but suddenly came into the house. "Ha ha, is the little medical fairy inside? If so, I will come in." Although the middle-aged man said this, as soon as he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate to push the door open. Then when his eyes fell on Xian Chen beside the little medical fairy, the middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. The solemn-looking middle-aged man looked at Xian Chen carefully and then said politely, "Your Excellency must be Xian Chen, the son of the Xiao family in Wuyutan City, Xiao Buobutong, right? If you are not enjoying the glory and wealth in the Xiao family, why are you here in the magical Beast Mountain range?" The middle-aged man asked Xian Chen cautiously. After all, he came prepared this time. With a wave of his hand, several soldiers holding weapons instantly appeared behind him. Each of these supporting soldiers has the logo of the Wolf Head Supporting Corps, so it doesn't take much to know that the owner of Wanyaozai has obviously reached an agreement with the people of the Wolf Head Adventure Group. "Now that you know that I am from the Xiao family, what are you still doing here? Don't you know that offending the Xiao family is tantamount to seeking death?" Xian Chen sneered, making the middle-aged man's face look extremely ugly. As he raised his hand and waved, the soldiers immediately grasped their weapons and were about to attack the two of them. However, at this moment, Xian Chen began to beat these ignorant guys with his bare hands. As for the owner of Wanyaozai, it can be said that he was beaten extremely miserably by Xian Chen. A set of beautiful teeth were not only shattered by Xian Chen's punch, but both arms were also broken by Xian Chen's full strength. The owner of Wanyaozai fell to the ground in regret, but his face looked extremely painful. The soldiers who heard the sound also came out one after another. Seeing that the owner of Wanyaozai was beaten like this, they couldn't help but shake their heads. However, when they learned that the owner of the 10,000 medicine palace wanted to take advantage of the relationship with the little medical fairy, they all punched and kicked the already miserable owner of the 10,000 medicine palace until he was barely alive. Exist. As those supporting soldiers joined in, Xian Chen hugged the little medical fairy's slender waist. Under the confused gazes of the soldiers, Suankin's feet made a loud bang on the ground. Then his body suddenly rose into the sky, and finally landed firmly on the back of an extremely huge blue eagle. Standing on the broad eagle's back, Xian Chen looked down at the rapidly retreating town below, and then looked at the majestic blue eagle at his feet, but his face was full of doubts. "How's it going?" "Unexpectedly, I also have a flying mount," the little doctor said proudly, but when he noticed a pair of black wings appearing behind Xian Chen, the little doctor originally wanted to show off. Immortal, but he quickly shut his mouth. "Where are you going to take me to play?" The little medical fairy blinked her big eyes, looking at Xian Chen with eyes full of happiness. Xian Chen hesitated for a moment and then said seriously, "Don't you want to go to Wuyutan City for a serious stroll?" Of course I will accompany you to Wuyutan City. Tisk tisk, I thought you had the strength to fight the emperor and could take me to Yunlin section. The little medical fairy said this deliberately, but he didn't want to. Xian Chen reached out and pinched the other person's cheek and said with a lewd expression. Why go to Yunlin sect? It's easier to go to my house. Go, to your house. The little medical fairy looked at Xian Chen in confusion, but when he heard the meaning of the other party's words, he raised his foot and stepped hard. Although the little medical fairy's ability naturally had no impact on Suankin's pain, he was too concerned about the little medical fairy's mood, so Xian Chen squatted on the ground and wailed in pain. When the giant blue eagle, which was trampled under their feet by the two of them, noticed that there was an extremely powerful human being on its back, it was so shocked that its pupils widened and it didn't dare to relax at all. Under the leadership of this blue giant eagle, it finally stopped in the sky above Wuyutan City. At this moment, Wuyutan City seems to be sparsely crowded compared to the bustle before. Father, look at the sky. In a restaurant, a young man with a broken arm pointed his finger in the sky with a ferocious face. However, when he saw a familiar figure in the sky, he staggered in shock. But the middle-aged man whom the young man called his father couldn't help but frown tightly when he looked in the direction he was pointing. Why is he here? Jia Libi's face was extremely livid. Since Xian Chen left, he and Appa have teamed up to attack the Xiao family 8 times. Now seeing Xian Chen's sudden return, Galabai, who thought he was sure of victory, suddenly felt that God was not good enough. However, when he noticed that there was a pretty girl standing next to Xian Chen, the expression on his face became extremely complicated. But in a small courtyard of the Xiao family, a dark shadow suddenly flashed and appeared next to Xiao Sunur. Miss, he's back. Ling Ying responded respectfully to the girl in front of him, causing the melancholy girl's eyes to gradually brighten. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 80. You mean brother Xian Chen is back? How is this possible? Ling Ying, don't lie to me on purpose just to make me happy. Xiao Sunur's originally beautiful eyes turned dim in an instant. After hearing Xiao Sunur's words, Ling Ying, who stood respectfully in front of Xiao Sunur, felt helpless. Miss, Ling Ying doesn't dare to deceive the lady. Mr. Xian Chen, he is really back, but there is a young girl beside him. Although that girl is not as beautiful as the young lady, she must be able to attract Mr. Xian Chen. She must have something special about her. Ling Ying said with a smile on his face, his serious look on his face. It was obvious that he was warning something. When she heard that there was another girl beside Xian Chen, she frowned and immediately took down the sword hanging diagonally on the wall. As the sword flashed with an extremely dazzling cold light, Xiao Sunur ran towards the outside of the small courtyard under Ling Ying's confused gaze. Ling Ying raised her brows, but did not dare to hesitate. She hurriedly hid her fighting spirit and followed the opponent from a distance. Those Xiao family members all looked panicked at this moment. After all, ever since such a major change happened to the Xiao family, the remaining 2 major families, under the unscrupulous and crazy plundering of Obapa and Galebai, can be said to have annexed almost all the Xiao family's original market. The elders of the Xiao family, who usually seemed to be united, now started to divide into many factions for the position of the head of the Xiao family after Xiao Zhan became a useless person who could not cultivate. Due to Xian Chen's departure, Xiao Butong, who had the strongest say, chose to remain silent when the factions competed for the position of clan leader. In a nice courtyard, a young girl with a plump and exquisite body was sitting on a stone chair in a daze. As for the young man sitting on the other side, his eyes were always on the girl's fair and round legs. I couldn't calm down the throbbing deep in my heart for a long time. Sister, when Grandpa becomes the clan leader, the status of the 2 of us in the Xiao family will inevitably rise with the tide. As for that good-for-nothing Xiao Yan, humph, I must throw him into the Warcraft Mountains. This young man is none other than Xiao Ning, his cousin who hates Xiao Yan deeply. At this time, because the great elder had the support of the other two elders, his cousin, who was not very famous, attracted a lot of attention almost instantly. And even some ladies from other families who usually glanced at Xiao Ning were sending tokens one after another at this moment, as if they wanted to tie the knot with him. However, Xiao Yu was not as happy as Xiao Ning. Ever since he learned that Xian Chen had left, Xiao Yu's whole soul seemed to fly away with him. When Xiao Ning saw that his own sister was in a daze, completely unable to listen to her own words, Xiao Ning pretended to be mysterious and casually placed her hands on her long white legs. Feeling the slight change, Xiao Yu's originally dull expression reacted instantly. With a frown, she glared at the other person and said in a deep voice, "Xiao Ning, I am your biological sister. Please pay attention to your behavior. Otherwise, even if I am a biological sibling, I will definitely make you cry. Go back." Xiao Yu already hated his wretched younger brother. It's just that the other party is the only male in the family after all. If she really hurts him, I'm afraid not only her grandfather will make trouble for her, but even her own clan members will definitely regard her as a sinner. However, Xiao Ning smiled indifferently, and then gently pushed the cakes on the table with her hand. "This is the latest pastry that Grandpa bought from the pastry shop. Try it." Xiao Ning pushed the pastry in front of Xiao Yu. When Xiao Yu was slightly confused, he reached out and picked up a piece. Looking at this sweet and delicious pastry, Xiao Yu opened her red lips and took a bite without hesitation. This pastry was extremely fragrant, and Xiao Yu continued to taste it with satisfaction. Not long after, Xiao Yu ate the entire piece of pastry and was about to get up and leave when he suddenly felt as if there was an inexplicable flame in his heart, lingering and burning. As Xiao Yu's bright eyes gradually became blurred, a fire of ignorance seemed to be deliberately driving away her reason, making her feel in a trance. Xiao Ning. What did you add to this?" Xiao Yu's pretty face was livid, and she raised her palm like a reflex, and was about to slap it down on Xiao Ning's face. However, when the slap actually landed on Xiao Ning's face, it seemed extremely soft and weak. When Xiao Ning saw this, he immediately reached out and hugged the other person's soft waist. Under such circumstances, Xiao Yu, who was forced to panic, suddenly opened her mouth and bit Xiao Ning's shoulder. However, I came into contact with the manly scent at such a close distance. The nameless fire in her body. But in an instant, it was like dry wood meeting a raging fire, burning fiercely. Seeing that Xiao Yu had fallen into the trap and looked vulgar, Xiao Ning began to use his leisurely and familiar techniques to hum as much as he wanted. In this sudden situation, Xiao Yu, who was in a daze, suddenly opened his red lips, which made Xiao Ning, who looked wretched, look extremely excited. Just when Xiao Ning was about to take pity on his sister, unexpectedly, an old man exuding a terrifying aura suddenly appeared from the courtyard gate not far away. There was a murderous intent in the old man's dark eyes, and Xiao Ning was so shocked that he released Xiao Yu's restraints on the spot. The old man's ghost-like figure arrived in front of Xiao Ning not long after. Just when Xiao Ning looked horrified, suddenly, the old man suddenly raised his hand and slapped him hard. This sudden slap caught Xiao Ning off guard, and he shouted loudly on the spot, "Grandpa! Why do you hit me? Do you allow Xian Chen to take advantage of her, but don't allow me to take advantage of her?" When the great elder saw that such a shameless guy could speak such beastly words, he clenched his fist and hit him hard in the abdomen. This heavy punch can be said to be very accurate. If the elder did not avoid it intentionally, otherwise, this punch would be enough to make Xiao Ning a cripple on the spot. Seeing Xiao Yu's appearance, the elder's face turned dark and terrifying. He gave Xiao Ning a hard look and then hurriedly picked up Xiao Yu. He turned around and glared at Xiao Ning fiercely, and scolded, "Xian Chen is back. If you don't want to die, get out of Wuyutan City as soon as possible." What? This sentence was like a bolt from the blue, and Xiao Ning was so frightened that he realized and ran away in a hurry. But when the great elder looked at Xiao Yu in this state, he took a deep breath. He quickly rushed into the house and found many maids guarding the door. Not long after, in the main hall of the Xiao family, a young man in black robes sat firmly at the head of the main hall of the Xiao family, holding a teacup in his hand, looking extremely calm. On the left side of the black-robed boy, stood a young girl with a good figure. As for the elders in the hall who had received news of Suankin's arrival, they all looked extremely frightened. "You Xianchen! You such a heartless man! Leave when you say you want to leave, and come back when you say you'll come back. Do you think the Xiao family is a restaurant where you can come and leave whenever you want? Call out!" With a cry from outside the main hall. Immediately afterwards, a sword with cold light came violently toward Xianchen's face at an extremely fast speed.